The tribulation is the 7-year period of time after the rapture of the church where God will reestablish his program with Israel. Now, the reason he must reestablish his program with Israel is because God's revelation was to come through Israel. His written and living revelation was to come through his sovereign choice of the nation Israel. Because of Israel's rejection of Messiah, God has placed them aside for the time being to work with the church. The church will be raptured, as we have seen, introducing the 70th week of Daniel, or the last 7 years of history as we now know it. There will be a peace treaty signed. We've already seen this, by the Antichrist, and he will seem like the answer to the Middle East conflict. He will establish a peace treaty. This Antichrist will arise out of Europe, the 10 toes of Daniel, overseeing the now already built European Confederation of nations that now exist in Europe, where the Bible prophesied that there would be a common currency. It's now in place, the euro. And so the Antichrist will arise, and he will be this peacemaker in the first half of the tribulation. Satan understands that to block the second coming of Christ, he's got to get rid of Israel. Because Israel is the one thing standing in the way of him nullifying the promises of God. Because God promised it would come through Israel. Israel has rejected him. Therefore, he must get rid of Israel so that they do not respond to him. And so when you get to this part of prophecy, Israel is on center stage. And the Middle East is on the front page. So let's bring it now to the middle of the tribulation. Over and over again, the mention of 3.5 years or 42 months, over and over and over again. That's called in the Bible the Great Tribulation, the last half of the 7-year period. During this period of time, the last 3.5 years, something is going to occur. That something is summarized for us in Daniel chapter 11, verses 40 to 45. And I will summarize for you now. Because this will occur as we come to the middle of the tribulation, which will set in motion Armageddon. The prophet Daniel, prophesying about the Antichrist who is to come, says in chapter 11, at the end of time, the king of the south will collide with him, the Antichrist, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships. And he will enter countries, overflow them, and pass through. He will also enter the beautiful land, Israel, and many countries will fall, but these will be rescued out of his hand. Verse 42, then he will stretch out his hand against other countries, and the land of Egypt will not escape. But he will gain control over the hidden treasure and gold and silver and over the precious things of Egypt. Verse 44, but rumors from the east and from the north will disturb him, and he will go forth with great wrath to destroy and annihilate many. Daniel, now prophesying about the end time, at the end of time, says that there will be a reaction to the rise of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to arise as this worldwide peacemaker, and he will say, like Hitler, today Europe, tomorrow the world. And he will lay claim to world rulership. The king of the north, Russia, and the communist bloc is going to react to that, not wanting the Antichrist to rule, and will attack the Antichrist. So you should not be surprised today when you open up the newspaper and see that Russia has now come to the aid of Syria, joining Iran against Israel. he says there will now also be a reaction from the king of the south. That's Egypt and the Islamic contingency, which is also against Israel. So Egypt, the Arab nations, and the religion of Islam is going to come against Israel and the Antichrist, who has positioned himself initially as a friend of Israel. So you've got these two groups coming against the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to defeat them, causing another army to come into the play. You read it, it's the army from the east. That's China. That's the Eastern Bloc, which, seeing the power of the Antichrist and not wanting to be overruled, will move, the book of Revelation says, with an army of 200 million strong to come up against the Antichrist, who has set himself up to rule the whole world. So you got all of this stuff happening, and it's all happening in one location, the Middle East.